There you go. All right. So yesterday I had a presentation on creating and managing good sports environments for children. Today I'm doing this presentation on talent. And just for your awareness, that is not something that's easy. To then have the computer. Sorry about that. Just to highlight. All right. Sometimes it does anyway. That even though that we distinguish between children and youth at the age of 12, so if you're 12 or below, we say you're a child or a kid, and then from 13 and onwards, we call you a youth. That's a hard line to actually find. So it's not that we say that, well, all of a sudden you're 13 and you're a youth. We know that's a transformation period happening. But today, what I'm going to talk about is the age when you are what we call a youth, and therefore also we can distinguish on talent. So that's why we use that timeline. Anyway, later on I'm going to talk about modern leadership. The reason why I want to discuss those three terms, like how to create and maintain an environment for children, is because as you see at the left column, last year we revamped the C license for our coaching courses. Because it needed to, it was outdated. And there I had a lot of insights in pedagogy, how children thinks, works, and like to develop all about this, about having playful and joyful environments to come into. And the most important thing there is for the kids having fun so they want to come back the next day. Then I've just been looking into what's on like the bottom, says Youth B. Youth B is where we distinguish, or we say you go from actually coaching kids to coaching youth. And that's more like you're not having a team, but you're looking after an environment. So an environment in the club, potentially between the age of 10 and 14, which is our major transfer period. The same about Lead Youth A, which is about the transfer period from being a youth or a talent, potentially a talent, and then becoming a senior. Those transfer periods we identified, well, along with so many other countries, are crucial periods in the life of talents, but also just regular leisure sport athletes. And then I'm going to talk about leadership later, because when you talk about the highest level of coaching, and we look at our pro license coaches, they are great at the pitch, but they have to be better beyond that. So they have to have a lot of leadership skills. I do a lot of leading with my staff at the Danish FA, and I'm very much interested in the concept of leading. So that's why I picked these three topics. Anyway, this is just a picture to remind myself how much I miss doing what I did, and how much I miss being in Canada. So when we ask the questions, the family and I, if we do miss being in Canada, we say, yeah, every single day. So anyway, I'll take you quickly past this. This is more or less what I've done to become head of coach education. Not to say that this is who I am. It is definitely not. This is where I have been, and then all the people I've met. I think I've been good on getting some inspiration for them, or taking something like that 1 little percent you can take out of every single encounter that you are making. For instance, when I had studied the minor in sports, I met some that is my best friends today. One that was my best man at the wedding. Psychology was definitely opened some doors for me in different positions. Playing at the World Cup against New Zealand, where I met John, was the opportunity for me to come here as well. So many things are just like tied together, and that's why I usually present something, talk about this life thread. or that there's so many things that we gain or take from others, and hopefully we give to others, that takes us where we are today. Not to say that's either a great spot or not the great spot, but that's definitely something that impacts us. And I've been super lucky to meet so many inspiring people throughout my life and career. Anyway, so that's the book, The Life We Live. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna present on the term around talent development and performance, saying that talent development and performance are not mutually exclusive. Talent development and performance can definitely support each other, or they can relate to another. They can be parallel to each other. Talent, performance, and result cannot. And that's where the distinction is for me, that if you look at performance, yes, results, no. That is not comparable, or that's good for the talent development. But what I will do is, with the history I just presented, or some of the things I've been through, that's given me some inside knowledge on research, but also the inspiration I've been meeting, that is me presenting with those glasses to you. Also meaning that's my personal viewpoint, that's my personal standpoint. Obviously, I will support some of the things with some research, some data, but also saying that not everything is, don't take it as this is how I know the world is. Definitely not. It's just how I see it. And I want you to have this reflect as we go. So what is your this about having a successful talent pathway? What is your foundation? I'll present ours in Denmark, but what is yours as a sport, as a region, as a city, as a club? Are you very much attuned into that? And then are you conscious and diligent about talent ID? Now, talent ID is a tricky one. In Denmark, we are not as many as 6 million. I think we're 5.8 million. And we do not, cannot afford to lose just one single talent in any sport. And I'll show you some things around that. Sometimes when you select talent, you also deselect potential great performances of great athletes within your sport. And making sure, so are you diligent about it, conscious when you do pick, what you also choose to do when you pick someone? And then what is the pathway for late bloomers? Because we do have late bloomers, we do have some kind of pathway. Again, in Denmark, I'm not saying this is the best way, but we do know that it's not everyone mature at the same time. So how are you going to make sure that you actually keep these late bloomers in your sport and with a focus to improve all the time? Then just a few views on data and being critic about data. Make sure that data is not, data should inform you, it shouldn't control you, and how you should ask questions for some of the data, and what I think we are doing at the minute. So that's just about the framework and what I would like you to do. I put in a video a few places, both to have some time for you to reflect. Things will actually happen on the video, but use some time to reflect. But definitely also so you won't be bothered listening to my voice for 70 minutes here. All right, so for me, there is these three things that I find is super important for us and the path we've been on. So this is about foundation for success. For us in Denmark, it's cooperation. Cooperation between so many different structures, so many different institutions like parents, schools, associations, clubs, academies, and all that. So that is imperative for us to have this cooperation with different kind of segments that's around the talent. Then there's something about resources and research. I'll dip into that a little bit. Then I'll show you a little bit about our next talent development strategy. We do have one that has been with us in the association and the clubs for, I think it's like 6 or 8 years, and we're trying to rethink it. I'm just doing a short presentation on that as well. Okay, so first and foremost, the foundation for success. So this is the ranking, the FIFA ranking of Denmark. The first one is the women. So the women are ranked 15th, and the men are ranked 11th in the world. And now that shouldn't be happening. As I just mentioned, we are a little short of 6 million people living in Denmark, and with this, we're definitely we're boxing above weight, so to speak. And this comes down to cooperation. Definitely is about cooperating with different kind of organizations. Now, this was one of the organizations I've been working in prior for me to come to Canada, called Team Denmark, which is equivalent to Own the Podium. And Team Denmark have got relationships with associations that could take a medal at the World Cup or the Olympics. So it's not all sports, but it's sports where we actually find ourselves having a potential for a medal and a big championship. So with them, we do some master plans. So we create master plans together to say, so what are you going to do in year one? So like 3 or 4 years before going into Olympics or the World Cup, and how do we measure if you're on the right track and all that. But we also have some of these projects we put in. And this was what was the project prior to the Rio, where we talked about like values for talent development. So this abbreviation, if you want to, like the H, the U, the S, the E, the T in Danish, is that's the house. So that's why we call this the talent house. So this had to be implemented in every single association that Team Denmark was working with. So values. So values is easy to say, so this is our value, but then we had this about development. It's focused on skill with a long-term goal. So that was a short statement. And then we created in all those different kind of value, one we call instructions of actions. So making sure that every single association that Team Denmark worked with had these instructions of actions. And when we followed up every 3rd month or 6 months, we were talking about, so how are you making these values come alive? For instance, the last one, selection of talents for national team groups and other select teams take place only at the age where a connection can be demonstrated between the talent's youth results and their later development. Now, there were so many sports, badminton being one, for instance, where they actually made a national, not a team, but a team camp, and they selected, believe it or not, I can't remember, under 14, under 16. However, there was no relationship between the one they selected for that particular age group and then the senior national team's result, meeting there was it was a waste of money, it was a waste of identifying, but also the risk of identifying or deselecting the actual ones that were going to make it to the World Cup or the national team or potentially taking a medal. So there had to be some kind of connection, and there had to be like something that they could make visible to us as an organization, to Team Denmark, that this was actually true. So that's a way of making sure that values and values for talent development is within the association. Now, FIFA makes this every year, an analysis of the talent development. Sorry, not every year, every 4 years, I believe it is. And then they compare it. So they compare every single association to each other, so to speak. And this is what we received just last year. I'll just show you a few examples of what they come back with. So now this is going to be interesting because I can't point, but I'll show you where to look. So the left column where it says Den is obviously Denmark, and that's the flag. And then the row right next to it, top 1 to 20, that's all the FIFA ranking between 1 and 20. And then where it says top 21 to top 50, that's all the FIFA ranking between like the teams or the association ranked 21 to 50 and so on down the line. And then if you look at what's at the left under the employees, if you compare us and this is the men's they're comparing, and you see the employees and you compare that to the top like 1 to 20, you can see we do not have so many employees if we compare to the associations we have either just above us or just below us, which is interesting. Like 10 full-time jobs less than the top 1 to 20. This one again, same thing with the rows. And then just let you see if you can find what this actually shows. I'll give you just a few seconds on it. So again, actually, it shows that, you know, Denmark has got more employees than the ones that we're actually comparing ourselves to, like those between number 1 and 20. But however, if you look at the dark blue, diagram, I think just below Denmark, it's the full-time employees. And in Denmark, we have a lot of employees, but not too many full-time employees. And this is from the association standpoint, meaning that we do have a lot that we employ, but they work part-time or just a little, and then they work in their clubs, which again is like a massive thing for the cooperation between the clubs, the associations, the regions, that there's actually one who sometimes at the associations and sometimes at the club. So that conversation doesn't happen over a meeting or an interview or a call. It happens like normally because that's the same person stepping either in the association or at the club. This is again about average employees per academy. Now again, what you can see is we do not have a lot of employees per academy. We've got a lot of volunteers, and that is like a coin with two sides on it, so to speak, like a good one and a bad one. The good one is that we've got so many volunteers in our clubs that works for absolutely nothing, that works for free. Meaning that, you know, the money stay in the sport. You don't have to pay someone to actually do a job. On the other hand, we do have employees or we do have volunteers that sometimes, not all the time, I have to highlight that, but sometimes they do their job averagely, where you cannot fire volunteers. You have to accept that they have a full-time job on the side, and all of a sudden, if you say, you know, we've got a meeting tomorrow at 2, and they go, well, I'm working there, you can't really like push them to come. So something about the strength of having volunteering, making sure that the money stays in the club, and with something that we're together about because you want to as a volunteer. And then the downside is that you cannot really expect them to do the same amount of work as if they were actually hired. Then something I'm truly proud of is that we have a very well educated workforce at the association at the highest level. So 75% of all our coaches have got a pro license. We do have a lot of pro licenses in our country, but definitely making sure that we have the highest of education who's taking care of our national teams as a head coach, or as an assistant coach, or as a goalkeeper coach. So I think the what's called goalkeeper A, which is the highest license you can have as a goalkeeper coach, is included in the pro license from the percentages point of view. And again, if you can compare that to the rest of the associations, we are definitely above them. Once again, making sure that we actually have a very educated coaching staff. So from here, this is always interesting. If you're Danish, then you really don't want to highlight too many things from Germany, because that's definitely one of these, I'll say, relationships. I won't say a love-hate relationship, but it's something we always play Germany and they always win, and that's too bad. So the Euros 1992 was definitely the best thing. So we won the Euros, but we beat Germany. So that was definitely great. But I want to show you something. This is the time you get a little bit of reflection time. So to watch a video of the World Cup in 2014, and so do some reflection, and then I also have a point, obviously, of showing you that video.
Is it from you? Oh, there might be a little bit louder.
I'll pause it there. So this is the Euro under 21 in Sweden, where Germany won the gold medal. And what's interesting about that team is that in about 2000, Germany found out that some of the talents, or before 2000, because they initiated the project in 2000, some of the talents that the clubs picked, or some of the talents that the clubs didn't pick, were actually great players. So in this squad going to the Euros in 21, half of this squad wasn't picked by the clubs. So that meaning Bayern Munich didn't pick them, FC Köln didn't pick them, Schalke 04 didn't pick them. But what Germany had done previously or before that, because they recognized they were not maybe the best of talent IDing the under 13, was that they actually had these Stützpunkte. So they created Stützpunkte and they say, you know what, all you big clubs, all your big academies, you take the under 13s you think are going to be the best. And then, like if you take, like every club takes 200, like collectively, we take another 200. And then we're going to do this in these Stützpunkte. We're going to make sure that they get enough sessions, good enough sessions. We're going to play with players that are equal to them. And then we're going to continue building. And so half of the ones that are here in this picture didn't get selected by a pro academy in Germany. So they potentially would have been here if this Stützpunkte was there. Now, what you might have seen in the 2014 World Cup was some of the players that are also here. So Pierre Hövedes, one of them, Manuel Neuer. We got, who else we got? We got, what's his name? I can't remember his name. Mesut Özil, there you go. So there were 6 players that are actually here in this picture that went on to the 2014 World Cup and won the gold medal. So just realizing that even the best club in Germany couldn't pick the right players back in 2004 to make this team, but the Stützpunkte that Germany had, they captured them. And then this is just how it is these days, which is typically Germany, very, very thorough. So they got now 366 Stützpunkte. Now it's changed, so they're not making it like alongside with the clubs, they're making it prior to the clubs. That's unfortunately what's happening in the game today, that there's so much money in the game. So if you have a homegrown player, which is a player that you got from when he's a kid or youth, then you get a lot of money if they're sold to a pro club. So the clubs really want to select almost everyone, because then they know they got someone who they highly likely sell. But these days, the Stützpunkte is also below the age of 13, and that's just supporting their talent system throughout the sport. Then what we're doing is a little bit the same, that we do select someone like a bigger pool to come into sessions that we do as an association. And while the players are there, they cannot change clubs. So instead of a club coming to a player and saying, I think I've just seen you for a match, come to our club, and then they go like, well, I thought you were better than that, so now you can go back. They can actually watch them for a full year before they decide to take them on, which is definitely better than just watching a match and thinking and hoping this is the right player. So that was a little bit about the foundation for success. That's definitely the cooperation. Now looking into the resources and the research that we do know something about talent development and performance is that unfortunately and thankfully, this is what decides who's actually getting selected as a talent or who's coming through our talent pathway. Geography, that's not great. A birthday, that's not great either. But we see a lot of clubs now investing in environment also because it's definitely encouraged through the FA. So I'll go through some of all these about geography, birthdays, and environment. So just to give you an overview, this is how Denmark looks right now on the players who are active from the age 13 and up to 20. So you can see it's a pretty steep decline in the participants in that age group. We're very much aware of that. So we're losing players. Every sport is losing members. So it's in Danish, the dark blue, that's organized, like an organized sport. Like if you are participating in a volleyball club, you're paying a fee, then you are in an organized sport. The light blue is if it's unorganized, and then the green one is private. And as you can see, if you cut a line when it's at approximately 13, we have a massive decline in all, like across all the sports in Denmark. So where the children are getting young or into youth, we're losing members. And they're going either to stop or they're going into the to the private. So there's something around that we need to make sure that we I won't say that we keep them because that sounds negative, but we make our environment good enough for them not wanting to leave. So if you look at this about talent, so this is my favorite visualization of a talent. So if you go like we're always looking for the top wooden sticks there, going for who's the fastest or who's the most smart player. But there is definitely some things that you need to have. You can be a very smart player, but you cannot be too slow. That's sometimes what we look for in talent. We look for those peak things that they're very much better than anyone else in. But sometimes that's what's changed when they're growing up. Oh, so this is a model made by Mette Krogh Christensen from the University of Southern Denmark, and I usually like to think of it as a way of going from looking at a grain to create a carrot and looking at the soil only. So if you look at the talent model, that's the grain thing, right? It's the genes, you're born with something, like everything's just innate. You got it right here in the little thing that you put into the ground, and then all of a sudden you do have a carrot. Where the training model and the generous model are more like that's a training. The 10,000 hours that we are past now, that we know that even though you put 10,000 hours and it's not focused, you don't really get anything out of that. But then also going over to the generalist model where you say, well, late specialization, deliberate play instead of deliberate practice. And then all the way across to the ecology, looking at the environment. And that's where we are right now, that we look at environments instead of grain or instead of carrot. Like, where is it that our talent is actually trying to develop? How can we impact the environment where our talent is going to develop? Now, this is a very useful model, and as any other models, it's a simplified model because if it was simplified, it would be a model. Anyway, but it shows a little bit about all the interest or all the different touching points that are elite athlete can have. If you look at, so the right side would be where the domain is athletic, and the left side would be a non-athletic domain. So you see the athlete is in the middle. They talk to coaches, assistant coaches, all that. They talk to experts, meaning like that could be physiotherapists, that could be goalkeeper coaches. If you've got that, you talk to managers who might be owning the club, or talent development does, head of talent, if you've got that. Young athlete, club mates, all that. So you've got a lot of touch points. And then beyond that, that's more the micro environment, and beyond that, that's a macro environment. But showing a little bit about like all the different interests that's actually around this potential elite athlete. And what we did actually when I was here in Canada at some point, we had a test on if you are a talented player and you live in Canada, how many touch points do you have? Now I can't remember if that was 21 or 24, but one player had, I'll say 24 touch points within 1 month, meaning she had a connection with a physiotherapist, a mental performer, a strength and conditioning coach, me as a head coach, an assistant coach, a club physiotherapist, her parents, all of them that it tried to impact her career. And now what we've tried to do is, with all that insight, could we potentially change things up a little bit? So this is not about all the different experts, all the different surroundings, all the time just speaking to the athlete, but that the surroundings are actually having the conversation together right now. So what is the most important thing for the player or the athlete at the minute? And you go, well, I'm the head coach. She's actually playing. She's getting significant amount of playing time. She's doing well. It's important, I think, but maybe the most important thing right now is the mental performance. How can you keep yourself in the game all the time? How can you make sure you continue playing all the time and getting enough of playing time in the team? So sometimes we're so eager, and that's everyone, so eager to, with the best interest of actually giving everything we can to the athlete, but they get overwhelmed with information. So it's something about cooperating on who's actually delivering the message in this month, in the next month, what's most important right now for the player. That's something about birthday. So I don't know if you've seen, this is more on, there's still on geography, sorry. On this is the where the Danes, the national team, that's the players on the national team that has been representing in the A from like A national team that was born 95 or later. And as you can see, like if you are in the west part of Denmark, you are apparently not a very good player. If you're on the east side, you are apparently a very good player. So there's something about the geography, and that is obviously not the reason. One of the reasons why is if you're in Copenhagen, I'll just show you this picture around at the Euros, where the players came that actually represented Denmark at the Euros, the same thing. Copenhagen is right there where you can see the magnifier. That's where Copenhagen are at. And if you are living in Copenhagen and you're going to the biggest club, FC Copenhagen, and you're not selected, you travel about 10 miles and you go to another club called Brøndby, which is great for talent development. And if they don't select you, you go 10 miles the other way. So you've got so many talent development environments around you. So if you're not getting selected, that's just another offer. If you're living in the western part of the country, it's different. First of all, the clubs there aren't having the biggest support on the environment. We call these like the gray places. So how come there's not coming any talent from that part of Denmark? So that's obviously something that we need to do something about, because geography cannot be the decider of having a career in the game. I know that you don't have to be in the national team to actually have a career. But if you look at this as well, that's across so many years that this cannot look like that within like 10 years or 20 years, because we lose talent. So That was the geography piece. Now coming to the birthday. Don't know if you heard about this concept. It's called relevant or relative age effect. Now, relative age effect is something that we've been discussing ever since I started coaching a long time ago. Because we looked at our national teams and we saw the selection, and the relative age effect has definitely got an impact. So, for instance, just to be, it's easier. So if you're 10 years old, you're born in January, then you got like a 10% advantage than if you're 10 years old and you're born in December. Or well, maybe even more because it's 12 months, right? But you've got an advantage, and that's a massive advantage, which when you're 12 or 10, it's decreasing, but you still got an advantage. And that just shows in our national team and in the selection. Now, the green ones are under 17. These are birthdays and then girls. You can see 3 columns: January, April, then May, August, and that's September all the way through December. So many more are actually born in the first 4 months if you compare to the last 4 months. Well, so many more, definitely more. But if you look at the boys, it's even worse. So again, the relative age effect, that means that you select players often because they are big, they are born early. And obviously, if you're born early in the year, you do have an advantage in the way you mature, just because of the nature of being born early in the year. And we've known that, like since, I think it's 20 years since we saw the same thing, but we haven't really solved it yet. So that's the relative age effect that we know of. We haven't really solved there. Then there's this about relative growth. And a relative growth is a little bit different, but it impacts in the same way. And show you, this is just how the, is it called peak height velocity? Like you see when males or females are actually peaking in when they're gaining their heights the most. And that's just in puberty as well. But this is on average. It can be like a big variation if you are stepping into puberty at 12 or 14, 15, or even later. And that impacts how you look. And if you're not like very like reflective on it as a coach, then you might select the most developed player instead of the player with the most potential. Now, this is about relative growth. You can see a great picture here. So this is the 2 keepers who is now the national team keepers for Belgium, Thibaut Courtois and Koen Casteels. So these, the one to the left is when they were under 15, and the one to the right is where they're at now. So those are the ones that stand on each side as a goalkeeper. And if you were to select them at the under 15, you go, well, goalkeepers, they have to have a certain height. Then you might deselect Courtois. But that's just because he matured later than his colleague Koen Casteels, and that's the relative growth effect. And now, if you then say, well, we've got a relative age effect and a relative growth effect, now we've got an issue. If you look at what United had, this is where I've had the biggest, I have heard of the biggest difference between 2 players. So I've got 2 boys aged 9. But the biological age was 6.5 and then 12. So just imagine that those 2 boys were actually playing against each other. Then if I was about to say the untrained eye, but even the trained eye, looking at them will definitely say, or highly likely say, that the one who's biologically 12 will be a better player. They'll definitely say he is a better player because he is almost twice the age of the other boy who is on the age in the passport. They are at the same level. So I don't know if you heard about this biobanding. I'll show you a little video about it. It's something we started, or we're looking into starting in Denmark, and this is something I found that US is doing as well. I'll just play the video and then just have you reflect what your thoughts are on biobanding. yeah, they'll tell you what it's all about.
They're taller, stronger, and faster. Teammates on their local soccer teams. They're also 13 years old and will mature later than their teammates. Right now they're smaller, weaker, and slower. Since Gabriella and Tyler it's easier for them to place more emphasis on their physical and less on their technical ability. At the same time, Diego and Leon, because they haven't matured as quickly, they struggle with the speed or physical nature of the game. Children grow and mature at different rates. That's just how it works, right? There's nothing you can do. What's the big deal? In sports like soccer, the difference in maturity at a young age can create a false impression for coaches who often perceive players who mature early as more talented. The players that mature with them might be more technically gifted, but aren't able to show this at the time. That's a problem. In order to improve the overall quality of soccer,
Okay, I think I'll just. I think I just biffed that because that was terrible. That sounds terrible, I guess. So anyway, we'll go straight in. Just so you know, the biobanding is when an association try to match the ones that's got the same biological age. So what they do is that they can measure them. So they can measure their height, their sitting height, and their weight, and then they can decide or define how tall they're going to be. But it's only, I think it's about 88% of the chance of the like they can be accurate. And I've got this. I know I can see the potential of like the same level players playing against each other. It's just this about measuring children. I won't say it, but because we talk about be like more than 12, so it's not children, but still it's a very young age to measure kids. I think we've seen too many things that are having like more riskful than beneficial. So I think there's pros and cons here, and so we struggle. Well, we are actually going to do it, but I struggle on finding out if this is the if we want to take that route or if we're not. So we're going there, but it's still we're gonna the men's side. I'm just having this around. Do we also want to go down the women's side and all these things that could have an impact anyway? Because you can actually. So this is obviously Harry Kane. So he started his when he played in Arsenal, but Arsenal didn't select him because he was too tiny. And I could imagine they'll like to redo that. But they didn't select Harry Kane. He went on to play in Tottenham, and Tottenham almost biffed him for the same reasons. They thought he was too tiny. And then there was a coach in the club who talked to his father, and his father was like big. He was a big man. And then he was like, well, if this is your father, that's you will highly likely grow within a short period of time, and you will be very physical. And that's what happens. So sometimes it's also you just use your senses, your eye, and look at the parents and say, you know what, you're highly likely not matured like the other in the age groups. Yet you don't have to measure. That's just on me, I guess. Anyway, so that was a little bit on biobanding. Then just on data as well. This will be a question. I'm highly likely you won't be able to answer it because you're on call and I'm here anyway. So there's this Hungarian mathematician who is called Val, and during the Second World War, he was getting these kind of information from the planes that tried to go over to Germany and bomb them. And the red dots is where the planes that came back actually received holes in them. So he plotted them in. And the question I want to ask you is, where do you think that this plane needs to have the absolute highest amount of stabilization? Where would you put an emphasis on stabilizing this airplane. So obviously or not obviously, so what they came out of this was something they called like a selection bias, because if you see these dots where they're actually hitting some answering, you want to solidify the plane where the bullets are at. But the planes that didn't make it back were highly likely where the bullets have hit where there is no bullet holes. So this is the false selection kind of visual that I like to give when we talk about talent and talent selection. So this is a study made by Taylor and Russell. It's a little bit like old, but anyway, it's looking into the under 12 performance and how that's related to the adult performance. And as you can see, there's correlation, but it's not high. So you might say as a coach, you know what, rightfully rejected 94%, I'll definitely go with that. If we can say that 94 of the players that we don't select, that is for a reason, that might be good enough for you. If you say, well, rightfully accepted, up in the right corner, the upper right corner, 0.3% is rightfully accepted. Well, that's up to you to see if you're happy with that amount of number. But the wrongfully rejected, those will be the one that is the selection bias, because we can always look at the one we selected and the one came through. The one wrongfully rejected will be the ones that we actually didn't select, but they found their path, and somehow how they made it to the to have an impact on the adult performance. But that is a wrongful picture, because we don't know who might have made it of the deselected, because what's often happening is when I've got a mate, his name is Peter. Peter and I, we've always been at the games together. We played soccer together all the time. All of a sudden, he's selected. I'm not into the game anymore. So this about 0.7% will highly likely be a bigger number. And if we approach just to 1%, Denmark as a nation cannot afford to lose 1% of a talent pool. And even though I know that Canada is way more bigger, will also have more inhabitants, I could imagine that's also something you do not want. You do not want to miss talent in any kind of sport. So sometimes when you look at data, you have to be critical and say, yeah, well, 0.7, yes, but that's the ones that actually continued playing and then got into the having some kind of adult performance. All right, I'll go quickly through that because time is running a little bit short. So this is what we've found in like across. If you are identified as a talent, if you are playing in under 17 league level, if you're under 19 national team player, or you're just an under 17 player who enjoy the sport, then there's something that gives you the inner motivation to actually to continue playing. I got this, and once again, you can answer, but you can reflect and to see. So, what do you think? What do you think is the most important thing? If you have a survey that goes out to the players at your club, and they say, Drew, you say, what is the most important thing? Now, this is soccer. This is where we actually ask the question. And as you can see, there's not the biggest amounts of difference between the boys and the girls. But what do you think? So this is what we found, and again, like it's in Denmark, maybe that's not how it looks in Canada or Nova Scotia. But anyway, everyone is coming mostly because they're having fun. But second is improving, which is a massive message to me as head of coach education, because the coaches needs to be good enough in their session planning to create drills or create games so the players can actually improve. And if they improve, they're actually having fun. So then you can tick off the first two boxes. And rock bottom is winning, which, as I said, it's the under 17, like the best league, 19 national team players. It's the ones who is there for leisure. They want to improve and have fun. That's why they come to our football class or soccer class, and not too much about winning. And that's great information for us, because then we can actually tell our coaches, you know what, what's most important for you to do is create sessions where your players will improve. Now, with that in mind, we got this. That's a study from Glenn Nielsen from University of Copenhagen, who found that. So the green ones will be something that, the focus on mastery. 22% is actually, when they're saying positive about focus on mastery, they thrive as an inner motivation. So that's the highest thing that is like having a contribution of making the players continue. Support for autonomy, social support, all those three factors are important. What makes players stop? If you got a coach who have only focused on results, so what this study shows is actually if you've got focus on results and you've got high social support, then it's all right. If you've got one-sided focus on results, that's something that highly likely will make the players stop at your club. And then the controlling behavior of the coach as well. I'm gonna go quickly through some of these because is running. And I'll go to just that. So because with all the insights on this about making sure that they improve, making sure that they've got social support, and you as a cultural leader, as a coach, it's important so that you are supportive of the culture. So what is the question that you ask? Is that if they are winning, or if they are improving? So what do you emphasize? All right, so that was geography. It was a birthday, that was environment, which was some of the resource and research that we've done so far. So the talent development strategy, I'll make it pretty quick. My God, what's happened to the time? I don't know if you got licenses in. Well, I do know because I've just heard when I presented this topic that you do have. We have the same in Denmark. And one of the great things about licensing is this. So this is from our 17 and under 19 and potentially also under 15. As you can see, the first 14 clubs, if I go back one slide, they are ticking boxes. Oh, that was the wrong way. They are ticking different boxes. So one about, for instance, if you go at the 007, the under 17 coach, well, if you want to have 3 stars, then you need to have them on full time. So this slash is you can have a half time, but then you can put another half time in another place in this box. If you need 4 stars and you look at the under 19 coach, which is 007, then it has to be on full time. So that's the norm, the amount of time that you actually hire the coach. Again, if you're looking at the under 19 coach, but now you do it from an educational perspective, and you say, I want like maybe 3 or 3.5 stars, and I'm looking at the under 19 coach, he needs to have an A license. So we, as a federation, or those as a licensing system, can say, well, you know what, there has to be a half-time or full-time. They have to have an A license. And if they don't have that, well, then you cannot have 3 or 3.5 stars. And how does that impact everything? Well, it impacts them because the green ones you can see here, the top 14, they're playing in a league. So if you're playing in the best league in Denmark and you get 0 points, if you're ticking the boxes with the stars, you're still in the league the year after, and you're still in the year after. So you cannot, the result is not position you in the league. What's position you in the league is the amount of effort, resources, and money, and educated staff that you put into your academy, which is a great way, I feel, of making sure that the environment where our players are the most, where we got the most skillful coaches, the most skillful staff, but also they got the time to actually work with our best players. Right. I think I will just take that. So that's just for me and my presentations to summarize. So this around how we are doing it. The Foundation for Success in Denmark, definitely cooperation with schools, with clubs, with regions, associations, parents, all that's definitely a key factor for us. This about resources and research, also knowing that this about relative age effect, relative growth effect is something you need to be aware of when you're deciding on who's going to be what you call the talented players. Making sure that just because you pick them, the one you deselect might actually be like in the long run better. So how can you support those kind of players? And then the talent development strategy didn't show you too much, but what we have put together is something around the licensing system. What we're doing is making sure that we do have a strategy that supports that, and also look a little bit ahead on where we think the game is going and where we need to support the clubs more. So from there, just going back to this, the frame. So again, that was my reflecting questions for you, and giving you my frame around the picture, and hopefully that provoked some thinking or some questions. So let's see if there's some questions.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Kenneth. Definitely a lot of things to think about. And I know the picture of the two keepers is definitely like eye-opening, and the fact of a 9-year-old can biologically age of 6.5 or 12, and like the diversity that you'll have on a team, but to wait to see how they'll grow and what talent will come from there. So we do have a couple questions. I think these might have been asked before the session. So if there's other questions that you guys have, please put them in the chat box. But before the session, it looks like someone asked about, could you share your thoughts on athlete mentorship and how that is integrated into the development process?
So athlete mentorship, what's that mean?
I think that means like if an older athlete was being like a mentor or like a guide to a younger athlete.
Yeah. So we've got like that is not for. This is a long story. So what we are looking for right now is if we want like a sporting complex, we don't have that. Like we don't have a place where national teams meet. Sometimes we're in Copenhagen, sometimes we're in Odense, sometimes we're in Jutland. So the national team players doesn't meet each other, which is definitely a downside, because they have to see the part. They have to see, well, I'm here where Christian Eriksen is at. I'm here where Pernille Harder is at. At the club level, I know some of the clubs do have, like one of our best clubs on talent. They got, so first of all, you need to have a personal project. So as a senior player, you need to make sure that you invest your time, not your money, but you invest in time in something that's important to you. Some of them are having something about children's rights, something about having, especially now about assisting Ukraine, about sustainability and all that. And on top of that, they've got a player in the club that's in the under 12 to under 14 that they supervise. And the great thing here is that it's also the other way around. So I just heard the other day that they're actually sitting down with some of the first team players and giving them feedback. And it's tough feedback on the national or the first team player. So that connection, then just passing in the hall and saying, well, that's my mentee and that's my mentor, and all of a sudden it does something to the club. So it's not organized from an association's point of view, but some of the clubs are definitely doing that, and they find it highly beneficial.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. Hopefully that answered this person's question. And if not, just write in the chat box. We have a follow-up question. And then someone asked about having the slide deck and video for today. But so I think we can pass that on. The video definitely, so they can take a look at that. Are there any other questions for people in the audience? All right, we'll wrap it up there then. Thank you so much, Kenneth. And I know we have you again in about 10 minutes. Yep. So for everyone joining us online, I'll just flip this around on me. We'll see you back online in about 10 minutes where we'll do our closing, and Kenneth will wrap us up with his keynote. So thanks so much, everyone.